But I guess we should just move on to our last one.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that Mashle resembles Black Clover more than the series by the assistant of Yuki Tabata, Asahi Sakano. Their series is Guardian of the Witch, and if it resembles any series, it resembles Attack on Titan. There
Yeah,
is
kinda.
this walled city that is attacked by these giant beasts. In this manga, they're called evils, and they are just these grotesque looking monsters that, have, well, I guess a bunch of mouths all over them and spikes or whatnot. But basically, in this world, there are guardians who guard the walls, and there's also the witch, who is the one who's, kind of really responsible for, destroying all these evils. And the witch in this series is called Men-Asfa, and her guardian is Fafnir. There's, a specific guardian for witches, who are, the most, proficient knights in the country. They are assigned to guard the witch. And so Fafnir, he is very skilled, and so that's why he has this, duty. But they aren't on great terms because Fafnir really wants to be able to take out evils by himself and not have to rely on witches. Because he really doesn't like the whole mindset of people, kind of just relying on the witches and not, standing up for themselves, to take out these evils. But eventually, we find out kind of the secret behind this whole system, in which actually witches are not kind of born with their magic. They are kind of forcibly made. They round up at regular intervals thousands of girls who turn 12, and then they are injected with a seed of evil that is harvested from evils, and that's how they become witches, and 9 out of 10 girls die. And then one of the, very few of those who survive can also die, and then, barely any actually live on to become witches. But also, they eventually will become evils because the seed of evil grows within them and, it corrupts their body. So it's kind of Madoka Magica-esque in that, both the heroes and the villains are kind of two sides of the same coin because they become the villain after a certain point of time. Mm-hmm. Like how magical girls in Madoka eventually become the witches in that series. After they use up all their magic and whatever. But yeah, so the true duty of a guardian is to kill the witch before she can become an evil. But, of course, Fafnir does not go through with this because, he overhears Manasa talking about how much she hates witches too and how much she just wants to be a normal girl and how she's kind of a prisoner of this whole system. And so, he sympathizes with her, and he protects her, and then they run off together. And Fafnir pledges to kill witches and make Manasa the last witch and find a way to, return her to being a normal girl again. And that's basically the story. In the second chapter, they successfully escape the kingdom, and now they are wanted by, the entire government, the neighboring city-state. And they have, a huge bounty on their heads.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting. I only got to read the first chapter of this, and, I don't really have much to say on it other than, because it's a lot of setup for the rest of, basically for what's to come so far. But, I don't know. I'd like to see where it goes.
I would agree that it didn't really surprise me, especially compared to Mashle and Undead Unluck. There is a lot of conventional kind of setup in this series.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like in some ways, the series kind of reminded me, even more than Attack on Titan, of Yui Kamio in the sense that the girls in this series are given like powers to be used as weapons by another force, like in this case, like a government force. So like they're given power so that they can be controlled, and that's kind of made very specific and explicit in the first chapter when Manaswa is talking about how she's collared and she's like kept as a pet and stuff. So I guess my main concern with this series, and just with the whole idea of like eventually Manaska wants to be returned to a regular girl again, is kind of the implications of like these witches who are given like the great power are burdened with that power, and so in order to become free, they have to relinquish that power. And so, yeah, again, that implication I'm just not too fond of. Like, I hope that there are eventually female characters in the series that have power and can, like, use that power, that are not, like, burdened with, like, this extra baggage. Because I think that's kind of an unfortunate aspect of it, that, like, the female character in this series, even though she's so powerful, ultimately needs to be protected and then eventually be relieved of her power in order to live a normal life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, outside of that, I just, compared to the other two new Jump series, yeah, this one definitely felt a lot more conventional. Like, it didn't surprise me too much. I think I saw Maxie kind of tweeting about this a little bit. Like, this really feels like something that would have ran in Jump back in like the early 2000s almost. This almost kind of feels like a throwback, except it's not.
In terms of some kind of the, for lack of a better word, edginess of the manga, like there's a scene in the second chapter where Fafner like bites his wrist because he wants to remember the pain of getting hurt before he goes into battle as part of his routine. Like, that kind of style of writing definitely feels like a throwback to shonen of that yesteryear. It also it does not help with the Attack on Titan comparisons, because Eren also bites his tongue before he fights to activate his Titan powers.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of those things where it's like, because there's only so much out, I don't feel like I have much to add to the conversation at the moment, other than I'm willing to read more of this to see where it goes. And I'm not sure if this really has anything to do with anything, but recently I think I've decided for myself when it comes to these new Jump series, because it used to be that I would not start anything new until I saw how long it ran in the magazine. But, in this day and age where Viz pretty much picks up almost everything at this point, and I have, I'm paying for a Shonen Jump subscription, like, I figured I might as well give everything a chance at this point, since we're getting mostly everything at this point. I think my new rule of thumb is going to be basically, I will give every new series about 7 or 8 chapters to kind of like see where it goes and like see how it develops, because typically, I mean, unless I just find something really, really boring from the start or whatever, Gravity Boys, I think I dropped around like 4 or 5 chapters in. It just wasn't really doing anything for me personally. Yeah, typically, I think I could say that if something isn't pulling me in by the end of the first volume in like any way, then I don't know. I think at that point I could say that like, maybe it's not for me, or yeah, maybe I want to maybe kind of like wait and come back to this when there's more of it, or maybe I just, or maybe it's just not for me. I don't know. Because I've been feeling that way with Zip Man recently. Like, I liked it in the beginning, but at this point I just feel like it's really dragging its heels to really get anywhere. Unfortunately. So I think in terms of the Witch's Guardian, or the Guardian of the Witch, like I said, so far I do want to see where it goes, because I think it could be like a really cool, like, sort of supernatural, like, adventure series maybe, but I don't know, I guess for now we'll just have to see.
I think that's very reasonable to give series like that 7, 8 chapters, volumes worth, before deciding where to continue with it. In general, if a series doesn't grab you by then or really has established itself by then, it's also kind of unlikely to last very long.
Yeah.
Just from experience of previous Jump series. And especially considering there are so many and, that are being serialized and simulpublished, and there is always like a new rotation of new series just around the corner, it also kind of makes sense. Like that 7-8 chapter buffer period kind of takes you to when the next round would start up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I read everything just because I find myself enjoying reading everything usually, so I am interested in seeing how all three of these series pan out, and we'll see if they pick up and really find a footing and catch on. And I am most curious about Mashal and Undead Unluck, but Guardian of the Witch could potentially also surprise, so we will see, I suppose.
Yeah, Guardian of the Witch feels like it's probably going to be a slow burn, probably, so far.
Which isn't a great fit for Jump. Jump usually...
Unfortunately not, no.
To have series really hook people, like, immediately and get people talking. And so far, I don't know if any of these series have really gotten people talking the same way that previous, like, big hits really have. Like, usually, when something's gonna be a keeper when people are, like, really, really talking about it, like, every week and you're hearing that discussion. Promised Neverland was a big one in my mind that everyone was talking about, like, from the get-go. And they were like,
for sure.
Oh, this is going to be big, this is going to be big. Right now, I hear the most positive discussion of Mashal. But we'll see if that actually extends beyond kind of the community of people that I interact with. But I think it does hit some good bases that are very appealing to a lot of different people. So, maybe, hopefully.